Hello friends, this video on dual nature of radiation and matter part 2 is brought to you by examfear.com. No more fear from exam. Without wasting any more time, let's start with a topic, discovery of electron. You might be surprised why suddenly, when we want to discuss about dual nature of radiation and on, why suddenly am I discussing about the discovery of electron? What has electron to do with it? Okay, so before we actually study the concepts, here we have to see how this discovery came up. How did people arrive at this conclusion that light has particle nature as well? Now, when Maxwell was giving his electromagnetic theory and Young was performing his Young's double slit experiment, the diffraction phenomenon, when all these things were taking place, meanwhile, there were some other discoveries which were going on the other side. Right? Because in an era, there are hundreds and thousands of scientists performing so many experiments, right? So sometimes some experiments click somewhere and you get to discover new things. You get to see surprising results, right? So when all these research or all these experiments were going on, which were supporting the wave nature of light, somewhere around the same time, there were some other group of scientists who were also working hard, and they were also doing some research, and they were also able to discover certain things. So let us talk about these discoveries and we'll see where they take us to. These discoveries will take us somewhere where we want to reach in this lesson. So let us start with the discovery of electron. So do you really know how electron was discovered? Okay, we'll see it here. Somewhere around 1870s, there was a scientist named William Crookes. What did he do? He discovered something we know as cathode rays. What are cathode rays again? Okay. So somewhere around this time, there were a lot of experimentation going on regarding how discharges take place through gases. So all of you understand what is a discharge. What do I mean by discharge through a gas? That means, let us suppose, imagine an apparatus, something like this. Let us suppose you have a chamber, maybe you have this evacuated chamber, nothing is there, only vacuum. And you have two electrodes. One is your cathode and the other one is anode. So this is your cathode and this is your anode. So some experiments were going on that how discharge takes place. It was found that there were certain radiations which were coming out of cathode and moving towards anode. So it was found that at very low pressure, if the pressure was reduced to a very low value, there was a discharge taking place between these two electrodes when an electric field was applied to the gas which was present inside this chamber. So inside this chamber, it was filled with a gas and there were two electrodes. So when electric field was applied to the gas, it was found. So you apply an electric field to this gas and it was found that some discharge took place. What do I mean by discharge? That means some radiation were emitted and they were passing through the gas. So that was known as gas discharge. So some experiments were being conducted on similar lines, that how discharge takes place through gases. So now how did the scientists know that discharge was taking place through the gas, that something was flowing from cathode towards anode? That's because when they applied an electric field to the gas, they found some fluorescent glow on the anode. There was some kind of glow on the anode. So this fluorescent glow indicated that some radiations were coming to the anode. So if the radiations are coming towards the anode, that means the radiation is coming from the cathode, right? So William Crookes observed this and experimented with this, and he told that these rays are nothing but cathode rays. He named these radiations as cathode rays because they were emitted by the cathode. So he told that cathode rays are nothing but they are the rays which are emitted by the cathode when an electric field is applied to the gas and pressure is maintained at a very low value. So that's how cathode rays came into picture. Again, after some time, there was another scientist called J.J. Thomson. What did he do? He used the same discharge tube which was used by William Crookes. The same kind of arrangement was used by him, but now what he did, he applied a perpendicular electric field and magnetic field to the cathode rays. So that means whatever cathode rays, they were nothing but a radiation coming out from cathode. So to this radiation, he applied a perpendicular electric field and magnetic field. Now, by applying this electric field, this perpendicular electric and magnetic field, he was able to calculate the charge by mass ratio of the cathode rays. So he could calculate this value, charge by mass ratio. Till now, nobody knew what are these cathode rays. Cathode rays consist of what? But since the cathode rays were getting attracted towards the anode, and anode being the positive electrode, it was assumed that cathode rays must be consisting of negatively charged particles. That is why they are getting attracted towards the positive electrode, which is anode, right? So what did Thomson do? This was kind of Thomson's arrangement, where what he did, he applied a magnetic field. This cross represents a magnetic field, and he also applied an electric field between these two plates. Now from this electron gun, the stream of cathode rays were ejected, right? So it was found that those rays, instead of going straight and a screen was placed in front of them, it was seen that it got deflected. What happened under the influence of the electric and magnetic field, this rays actually, instead of going straight, they got deflected and they started following a kind of circular path. So Thomson did some calculations on this. So he said that what is the magnetic force due to the magnetic field which I applied? He said it is nothing but Q into V cross B, right? So that was nothing but EVB, where we are assuming that the charge on each particle of these cathode ray, nobody knew what those particles were. But he assumed that these negatively charged particle, let us assume that its charge on the negatively charged particle is E, velocity is V, and the magnetic field which he applied, he knew that magnitude, right? So that is B. Now since it is moving in a circular path, so this object, under the influence of this magnetic field, since it is moving in a circular path, so there is a centripetal force which is acting, which is mv square by r. So now these two forces will balance each other, the force due to the magnetic field and the centripetal force. So we can say that this is equal to this. So this V and this V will cancel. So we get charge by mass ratio is nothing but V divided by RB. So now in order to calculate this charge by mass ratio, he needs these three values, out of which magnetic field he knows because he is the one who applied the magnetic field. So what did he do to calculate this velocity and the radius? Okay, to calculate velocity, what he did, he used another arrangement. And if you have any difficulty in understanding what are these formulae which I am using, I have already explained all these things when I was teaching you the lessons on current, electricity, electrostatics, magnetostatics, right? In all those lessons I have already talked about magnetic force, electric force, like why an object or why a charged particle moves in a circular path when it moves through an applied magnetic field. So all these things I have explained there in detail. So in case you are having any difficulty in understanding, you can get back to those videos and view them first. Okay, so in order to calculate the velocity with which these charged particles were moving, what he did, he adjusted the electric field and the magnetic field in such a way that the force due to electric field on the charged particle is equal to the force due to magnetic field. Now what was the force due to magnetic field? It is nothing but charge on the particle into applied electric field. So this was equal to this. So from this he got that the velocity with which the particle is moving is nothing but E by B. So now he knew E, he knew B. So now he is able to calculate velocity. So the only thing which is left is R, that is the radius of the circular path. Now in order to calculate the radius of the circular path, he used mathematics. He used the chord property of mathematics. This distance was something which he was able to calculate because he has placed that screen and he could actually see where the where the charged particles are getting deflected. So he said, let us suppose that this distance is some distance, say B. He measured it, say it is whatever distance, x centimeters. So let us say this is B. And he also knew this distance, the distance from which the electron is getting deflected. So he called this distance as A. So he assumed that since the electron will be moving in a circular path, so he drew a circle and he told that let me assume that this line, this B, is nothing but a chord, because we cannot say that it is the diameter because we don't know where the center is, right? Because it is moving like this, it will be moving with in this kind of a circular path. So this distance is B, and as I mentioned, this distance is A. So this distance is A, and this entire diameter is, I told the radius is R, right? So the entire diameter is 2R. That means this remaining part is 2R minus A. Now by property of chords, now in order to know what is this property of chords, you should get back to your mathematics videos, right? So according to the property of chords, this into this is always equal to this part into this part. That is B into B is equal to 2R minus A into A. So from this he was able to find that R is equal to A square plus B square divided by 2A. So that is how he calculated R. Now using these values of B and R, he was able to calculate the charge by mass ratio. Right? So he found so this charge by mass ratio was often known as the specific charge. Many scientists use this specific charge terminology instead of charge by mass ratio. So after he got a specific value for this charge by mass ratio. So this was the next step. So the first step towards the discovery of electron was cathode rays. That time it was only observed that some kind of radiation is emitted. The next step was that radiation consists of some negatively charged particle, but we don't know anything else about that particle. But Thomson was able to calculate the charge by mass ratio of those particles of cathode rays. Right? Again, after some time, it was Thomson himself who again observed that when ultraviolet radiation fall on certain metals, then some negative particles were ejected. So again, the same scientist Thomson, he was not happy with whatever he did just by finding out the charge by mass ratio. He was continuously experimenting on this, and he found that when ultraviolet radiation falls on certain metals, not all metals, but some metals, then some negatively charged particles were emitted. And again he observed that when certain metals were heated, again some negatively charged particles were emitted. So Thomson was like kind of confused that what is this happening, from where are so many negatively charged particles coming up? There are so many different phenomena where we are getting the result that negatively charged particles are getting emitted. So there must be a correlation between all these particles. So what he did, he tried to find out the charge by mass ratio of these particles as well. That means the particles which were ejected when ultraviolet radiation fell on the metals. Also for the particles which were ejected when the metals were heated. And to his surprise, he found that the charge by mass ratio of these particles were the same as that he found in the previous case. In the previous scenario, that is for the cathode rays discharge arrangement, whatever charge by mass ratio he found, the value of charge by mass ratio in this case was also the same. So Thomson called these cathode ray particles. So he told that these cathode ray particles are nothing but they are a specific set of particles which is present everywhere. That is why, if ultraviolet radiation falls on certain metal and if that particle is getting ejected, that means that metal has those particles, right? If the metal doesn't have those particles, then from where will it get ejected? It is something like, let us suppose a person is walking down the road. Somebody comes with a revolver and says that give me the cash which you have in your pocket. Now, if that person doesn't have cash in his pocket, he cannot give it to him, right? Only if he has cash, he can give it to the stranger, right? Similarly, in this case, if the metal is ejecting some negatively charged particle, that means those negatively charged particles are present somewhere inside the metal, correct? So Thomson said that these negatively charged particles are something which is common everywhere, which is present in metals also, which is present in that cathode electrode also. So he called this cathode ray particles as electrons. So Thomson discovered electron. So this is when the electron was discovered. The name electron came up. However, before this itself, everybody knew that cathode rays are made up of some negatively charged particle. But this was the time when it was universally declared as electron. So cathode ray particles were named as electron. Again, after a few years, somewhere around 1913, there was another scientist known as Millikan who performed a very famous experiment, which is known as oil drop experiment. So in this experiment, what he tried to do, he tried to calculate the charge on an oil drop. And he was able to calculate the charge on an oil drop, and he found that the charge on an oil drop was an integral multiple of a charge. So there was a small charge of which it was an integral multiple. So Millikan told that this fundamental charge is nothing but the charge on an electron. Why did he say so? Because before that it was told that electron is something which is present everywhere, which is present in all objects. So Thomson kind of told that electron is a basic constituent of everything which we see around us. Therefore, Millikan told that when the charge on an oil drop is an integral multiple of some small charge, that small charge must be the charge of an electron. So Millikan told that, what did he say? Charge on an oil drop was integral multiple of the charge on an electron. Now, so what happened as a result of all these experiments? What happened as a result of the effort of William Crookes, J.J. Thomson, Millikan? What was the final result? The final result or the final conclusion was that electron is a negatively charged fundamental constituent of matter, right? It was negatively charged, which was proved from the cathode ray experiment. It is a fundamental constituent of matter. It was also proved by Thomson when he saw that these negatively charged particles were emitted by metals also when they were heated, when they were subjected to ultraviolet rays, and also from the cathode rays. So they told that it is a negatively charged fundamental constituent of matter. They said that electron is the elementary charge. This was proved by Millikan's experiment. He told that charge on any object which we see in this world, they are integral multiple of this charge. So they said that this charge, that is 1.6 into 10 to the power minus 19 coulomb, this fundamental charge is nothing but the charge on an electron. And we generally denote it by a small e. Electric charge is quantized. What do I mean by the term quantized? It means that whatever I said just now, any charge of any object in this world is an integral multiple of this charge. So that means this charge is quantized. The specific charge, that is charge by mass ratio, is equal to 1.76 into 10 to the power 11 coulomb per kg. So this was the value which was calculated by J.J. Thomson in his experiments, with the experiment which I explained you in last slide, right? So these were some of the information which were discovered or which were known to everybody after these scientists were able to discover electron. So electron was discovered and we knew all these things about electrons. Now the point is, when J.J. Thomson had performed those experiments of subjecting a metal surface to ultraviolet light and electron was emitted, what was that? What was those kind of experiments? In those kind of experiments, he saw that there are many different ways or there are many different phenomena where electrons get emitted. So electron emission became another topic of discussion, that okay, everything consists of electrons, that is acceptable, that is fine. Now, why electron emission takes place from so many objects in so many different ways? So what is this electron emission? How does this electron emission actually take place? So that became a curious area where again scientists started working. Thank you. Please visit examfear.com to watch free educational videos, try free online tests, get the best quality study materials, study from the best tutors and mentors, and much more. Thank you once again.